After my divorce from Sophie, everyone thought I wouldn't let it go. I had put in so much effort to pave the way for her, ultimately making her the new queen of the entertainment industry. But as soon as she won the award, she turned to Ethan, the prince of the entertainment world. However, no one knew that it was actually me who initiated the divorce, because I had my eyes on Ethan's wife, Victoria, and even agreed to participate in a wife-swapping reality show. After my divorce from Sophie, everyone thought I wouldn't let it go. We met when we were nobodies and announced our marriage during our career rise. After the marriage, I secretly maneuvered to help her transition from a popular star to a powerful actress. But just when she succeeded and finally won an award, we announced our divorce, ending the marriage abruptly. All her fans thought I wasn't good enough for her, commenting that she should have dumped me long ago to shine on her own, calling me a hindrance to her progress. After my divorce from Sophie, everyone thought I wouldn't let it go. I had put in so much effort to pave the way for her, ultimately making her the new queen of the entertainment industry. But as soon as she won the award, she turned to Ethan, the prince of the entertainment world. However, no one knew that it was actually me who initiated the divorce, because I had my eyes on Ethan's wife, Victoria, and even agreed to participate in a wife-swapping reality show. After my divorce from Sophie, everyone thought I wouldn't let it go. We met when we were nobodies and announced our marriage during our career rise. After the marriage, I secretly maneuvered to help her transition from a popular star to a powerful actress. But just when she succeeded and finally won an award, we announced our divorce, ending the marriage abruptly. All her fans thought I wasn't good enough for her, commenting that she should have dumped me long ago to shine on her own, calling me a hindrance to her progress. However, no one knew that it was actually me who initiated the divorce. Her new drama co-star, Ethan, ate her food, drank her soup, and played her stage husband while I was preparing an anniversary gift for her and booking her favorite restaurant. Later, I ran into Ethan at the airport while picking her up. He greeted me warmly and whispered, "You know, we shared a blanket on this flight." He did it on purpose, wanting me to divorce her. I obliged, packing up all of Sophie's things and sending them away. Luckily, we didn't have any children. Sophie leaned against the door, looking at me with arrogant eyes and a disdainful tone, asking, "What else do you want?" I replied, "The phone I gave you." She hesitated for a moment but handed it over. During our passionate years, she shared every detail of her life with me, and I was her only priority. But now, I had been replaced and set to do not disturb. We divorced by agreement. She was eager to marry Ethan, the prince of the entertainment world, and to expedite the divorce, she voluntarily gave me most of her assets. She said she truly loved Ethan and signed a confidentiality agreement. On the day she left, I thought we would never have contact again until a month after the divorce when she called me again. She said, "Can we meet one more time?" I arrived early and overheard Sophie's manager talking to her in the lounge. The manager said, "We can't let the fans know you cheated. The show still needs to air. Even after the divorce, you're still a popular actress. As for him, he's just waiting to be laughed at. He won't be satisfied. You should trick him into thinking you want to go on a divorce reality show with him, making him think he can win you back, pleasing you in every way. In the end, the show's editing will make him look bad, and you can sell your tragic story to maintain your image." The manager nudged her and asked, "Are you listening?" Sophie, legs crossed, absent-mindedly scrolling through her phone, responded, The manager continued, "Do you believe that if you beckon, he'll come running like a dog? Grateful?" I smirked and headed straight to the meeting room. Half an hour later, when Sophie casually suggested the idea in the meeting room, I agreed on the spot. I earnestly said, "I'll go on the show." She stared into my eyes, smiling faintly. "Are you that desperate for me?" She was too confident, easy to deceive. I lowered my head, looking submissive, and said, "Yes, Sophie, do we still have a chance?" Her eyes were cold as she turned away, lightly saying, "Depends on your performance." However, she added, "This reality show isn't what you think. This divorce show will air during her new drama with Ethan to hype their on-screen couple. The show will focus on seeing marital problems from a different perspective. Ethan and she will share a room, while I will share a room with Ethan's wife, Victoria, who became famous at 19 with a hit drama, won a Grand Slam, and quickly retired to get married. Sophie picked up where she left off, riding on her resemblance to Victoria. Rumor has it that Ethan and Victoria live apart after marriage, with him longing for her. At the Hot Spring Hotel, 2 rooms separated by a wall, the reality show was live-streamed. Inside, there was an observation room, and outside, viewers commented. The comments buzzed. Sophie and Ethan are on a divorce reality show, sharing a room. They have such great chemistry. They look so good together. I knew Sophie and her husband had no feelings left. No one likes a drag. I've been waiting for their divorce for so long. The staff put heart rate monitors on Sophie and Ethan. She said, if your heart rate reaches 90, you can leave the room. The comments said it'll break in seconds, but unexpectedly their heart rate stayed at 88. Privately, they did everything together, too familiar with each other to slip up, but on the show, they pretended otherwise. The comments said, Ethan is so polite he doesn't dare get too close. Ethan, don't hold back. I'll give you Sophie. Ethan sat at the door. Sophie stood on the balcony for fresh air, and through a corner, I could see my room. Victoria hadn't arrived yet. I was alone, bored, sitting on the bed with the heart rate monitor on. Someone knocked on the door. It was a tall, curvy woman in a light beige trench coat, loosely tied at the waist, revealing a black, tight-fitting outfit and high-waisted shorts underneath, accentuating her long legs and slim waist. She slightly raised her hand to brush away the wet hair from her forehead, revealing her misty eyes. It was drizzling outside, and she carried a cool, misty aura. The comments said, my white moonlight is back. What can I say, Sophie? There's no comparison without contrast. Others commented, no need to step on others. I said to Victoria, you need to put this on. I handed her the other heart rate monitor. I remembered how much Sophie hated being compared to Victoria. In our first year of marriage, while walking the streets at midnight, I couldn't take my eyes off a giant luxury ad featuring Victoria. Sophie tugged at my ear and covered my eyes with her other hand, angrily saying, I knew you liked that type. Now in the other room, Sophie stood on the balcony, watching clearly as Victoria entered the room, closed the door, and put on the monitor. Sophie didn't mind because she had known since that night that Victoria's marriage to Ethan was a contract. Victoria didn't even like Ethan. So how could she possibly like someone as ordinary and divorced as me, whom Sophie despised? Sophie scoffed, indifferent, but scrutinized my reaction. I said, hello, I'm Sebastian. My heart rate stayed at 70 as I extended my hand to Victoria. She said, hello, Victoria. She shook my hand, and a few seconds later the monitor emitted a sharp, piercing beep. Victoria's heart rate spiked, but she remained the calmest of all. She pursed her lips and said, the monitor is broken. I replied, it worked fine after we changed it. Meanwhile, Sophie and Ethan's heart rates exceeded 90% during several compatibility games, allowing them to leave the room early. On my side, Victoria's heart rate remained at a pitiful 20. I asked the staff, if it never exceeds, do we have to stay in the room overnight? Victoria heard this, her shoulders straight, wearing a thin black camisole, her gaze cold and distant. The staff said, if the task fails, you can leave after an hour. Victoria and I were the last to leave. The comments were dismal. What a failure, they have no chemistry at all. Can we not watch him? I only want to see Ethan and Sophie. The comments were bleak until the live stream ended. In the post-interview rooms, crowded with cameras and lights, Sophie stood in a corner, watching Ethan being interviewed. Her gaze inadvertently swept over me. She asked me, excited, was there a moment you thought Victoria might like you? I couldn't be bothered to respond and was about to leave when she stopped me. She tilted her head and said, what to do, Sebastian? I'm increasingly convinced that divorcing you was the best decision. Someone passed by, and Sophie lowered her eyes, silent, still looking gentle and fragile, as if I had hurt her the most. After the interview, Ethan walked over to me, patted my shoulder, and said, Sebastian. He wore a bracelet on his wrist. He said, Take good care of Sophie, she really loves you. I had seen that bracelet before. Last year on our wedding anniversary, Sophie had a minor car accident while being followed by a stalker. She was fine, and I took her to a mountain to pray for her safety, buying her that bracelet. Now it was on Ethan's wrist. Ethan continued in front of the camera. Don't be so stubborn. Don't be too controlling. I hope more than anyone that you two are happy. I said nothing. Sophie didn't know, and Ethan didn't know, that I had another hidden reason for agreeing to participate in this reality show. When I prayed for that bracelet, I wasn't thinking about Sophie. The show was recorded on weekends, focusing on the concept of weekend couples. During the weekdays, I picked up my old job, trying to return to my former entertainment company as a manager. My former boss told me, Victoria and Ethan are already divorced. She signed a 10-year contract with Ethan's father's company, and now she can finally terminate it. She's reorganizing her studio. I recommended you to her. Following his address, I saw Victoria at the studio. Under the lights, her features were naturally alluring, with a subtle charm in her eyes, a face perfect for the screen. She was harder to approach than I had imagined. I waited outside for a long time until her assistant came out and said, "Sorry, Mr. Sebastian, we can't talk today." On the way back, the car broke down. It was 11 at night, raining in the wilderness. I held an umbrella, waiting for the tow truck, watching the passing cars like fleeting shadows in the night. None were there to pick me up. Suddenly, the headlights flashed and the window of a red Ferrari rolled down. Victoria's assistant said, "Mr. Sebastian, please get in the car." Victoria was in the back seat, eyes closed, leaning against the window, sleeping. Her breathing was shallow, her long legs slightly bent, with a faint scent of lily of the valley, the same scent from the day she shook my hand. The assistant asked softly, "Mr. Sebastian, I'm going to the gas station to buy a bottle of water. Do you want one?" I replied, "Just call me Sebastian. I'll go with you." He waved his hand and said, "I'll go. I'll be back soon." He got out of the car, and it was just Victoria and me inside. No one else, no cameras. The headlights flickered, the car dimly lit. Though separated by a row of seats, her breathing felt close to my ear. I stared at the nearby supermarket, glowing blue. The assistant was wandering around a shelf. I remembered once at a supermarket seeing an ad for Ethan. I said to Sophie, "Isn't that the male lead in your next drama? He looks pretty good." She rolled her eyes and said, "What? He's so pretentious, has a bad temper, and loves to act like a big shot. He looks down on everyone because he's a rich second generation." I didn't know that this pretentious person made her not come home time and again. Later, I learned from others that Ethan was her first love, whom she couldn't forget after they broke up when she couldn't rise to fame. But at the time, in the supermarket, she lightly changed the subject, asking me, "Brother, didn't you date anyone before me?" I replied, "No. At least that's what I always told her." Someone was kicking my leg in the car. A long leg from the back seat, the tip of a high heel sliding over my calf, not accidentally but deliberately, playfully, rhythmically kicking. I brushed her foot away, said nothing, didn't turn around, maintaining my previous posture as if nothing had happened. She softly said, "Sebastian." Her voice, perhaps just waking up, carried a lazy, soft tone like an inadvertent murmur. She said, "Long time no see." After all these years, she still likes to call my name like that, just as she did in that small, humid rental room where I drowned time and again in her intoxicating tenderness. After that day, Victoria and I didn't contact each other until the next weekend arrived. The reality show adopted a rotation system, and this weekend, the original couples would switch back. Ethan said to the director, his tone sincere, as if he was thinking about the show, "The audience's demand for Sophie and me is too high. If you switch back now, you'll be scolded by the viewers." The director thought for a few seconds and said, "But..." Ethan turned to Sophie and asked, "Sophie, what do you think?" In front of me, he asked Sophie, "Who do you choose tonight?" He had been waiting for this moment for a long time, a flash of pride and arrogance on his face. Sophie understood his meaning, deliberately glanced at me, and said with a light hum, "Do I even need to choose? The audience doesn't want to see him. Ethan got the answer he wanted and looked at me with a smile. Sebastian, you won't mind if I borrow Sophie for a few more days, right? We're doing this for the audience. You haven't been an actor, so you don't know. For actors, the audience's preference is the most important. You should consider the bigger picture. I interrupted firmly, okay. My tone was decisive. Sophie looked up at me. They all thought I would lose my temper, so they could edit my reaction into the show to highlight Ethan's gentleness and Sophie's grievance, but they didn't expect me to agree so readily. Ethan, who had memorized his lines with difficulty, had nowhere to say them, and after a long pause said dryly, "That's good, no backing out." I said, "Let's keep it this way from now on." His face stiffened slightly. Then he smiled again and said softly, "Are you trying to make Sophie jealous? Everyone knows you're on the show to win her back. What to do if she's not jealous and you can only watch her enter my room?" The director's team decided to continue last week's setting. Before leaving, Sophie asked Ethan with a hint of teasing, "Aren't you afraid of him being in the same room with Victoria?" Mentioning her name, Ethan's reaction was big, as if he had heard a huge joke. He said contemptuously, "I've never seen her like anyone. Even if they were locked together for a year, she wouldn't like him." They exchanged a knowing smile. Sophie, in front of me, took Ethan's coat and wore it herself. She said, "Sebastian, if you want to win me back, these tricks are not enough." She wanted to provoke me to get angry in public so she could rightfully become the victim. Sophie and Ethan were taken to a luxury villa, a reward for the highest heart rate couple last week. Ethan posted a candlelight dinner on social media, and the comments were all about their chemistry. I saw all this while scrolling on my phone in the show's car. The car was heading to the Old Town. The comments said, "If these two don't raise their heart rates today, they'll be eliminated, right?" They won't eliminate Victoria, given her status. They'll probably change partners. Boring. Why did Victoria take this show? The more bizarre, the more I ship it. I have a feeling something will happen. If something really happens, I'll eat my hat. I put away my phone and asked the staff, "Where are Victoria and I staying tonight?" He replied, "You have the lowest heart rates, so you have to accept the punishment. Tonight, you'll stay in." The car stopped, and he nodded towards the old residential building in front of me. He said, "Here, a rental apartment." I was speechless. I got out of the car with only a live camera inside the car filming me from a distance, capturing only my back, with no sound. I stood at the door, my mind blank for a few seconds, took out my phone, and called my former boss, also my unfortunate brother. I needed him to pour some cold water on me. I said, "Victoria said long time no see." He replied, "Buddy, it's one of life's 3 great illusions. Don't overthink it. What else could she say?" As expected, he continued, "To be blunt, who doesn't have an ex? She has so many choices. Why would she choose you, a divorced man, just because you relied on each other for a few months? Honestly, that was the lowest point in her life, her most unbearable days. Who would miss that?" He was right. I hung up the phone and opened the door. The room was pitch black. Victoria was standing on a chair trying to reach the ceiling light. As she raised her hand, I saw the bandage wrapped around her wrist. Seeing me enter, she naturally came down and handed me the light bulb. I climbed onto the chair and the light in my hand flickered on and off, just like the old tungsten lamp from back then. Too familiar. She said calmly, "Dinner." Simple words, no extra expression, making my unease seem even more out of place. I was overthinking. To her, this show might just be a way to end her marriage smoothly. Outside, it was snowing. She was tall with delicate features, leaning on the counter, preparing hot pot, exuding a housewife vibe. I took a picture of her back and posted it on social media, fulfilling the show's task. After eating, she washed the dishes and inexplicably started making the bed. There was only one bed. I awkwardly reminded her, "I can sleep on the floor." She barely perceptibly pursed her lips but said nothing. In the awkward atmosphere, I tried to make conversation. "Do you need to change the bandage on your hand?" She replied coldly, "I can do it myself." After showering, I came out of the bathroom to find the blanket already laid out on the floor. She was taking a long bandage from her suitcase. I instinctively looked away and took out my phone. Sophie had sent me a voice message. My hands were wet, and I accidentally played it out loud. Sophie had seen my social media post. Her voice message said, "Can you get used to hot pot? I always made you little cakes. I prepared a box for you today." When had she ever made me cakes? It was just to maintain her affectionate image on the show. I looked at my phone and the light above was blocked by Victoria. She asked, "Can you help me?" holding the roll of bandage. I was speechless. Hadn't she just said she could do it herself? As I changed the dressing and wrapped the bandage, I gently held her hand, feeling a warmth at my fingertips. The heating in this northern rental apartment was insufficient, with a scent of snow and rain seeping through the old house's gaps. Despite the cold, we kept our distance. I wrapped the bandage awkwardly, and she turned her face away. Unlike those days in the southern rental apartment where the heat was unbearable, back then, despite the heat, we indulged in each other's company as if there were no tomorrow. The tungsten light flickered on with a pop. We stood under it, reminiscent of our most impoverished and desperate year when we couldn't even afford to replace a light bulb. We repaired and reused that old tungsten light, often blinking in the middle of the night. Back then, 18-year-old Victoria told me, "If it blinks, it means I'm thinking of you." Tonight, in an age where nothing was lacking, the tungsten light blinked countless times. I looked down and asked Victoria, "Did you buy a faulty bulb?" She paused and looked directly into my eyes, saying, "Yes, I did it on purpose." I was puzzled. Why? She said, "If it's fixed, you won't hear it blink anymore." I was stunned. She took the bandage from my hand and said, "Sebastian." I asked, "What's up?" She asked, "Do you prefer hot pot or cake?" One must always answer honestly about food. I replied, "Hot pot." The comments buzzed. "Why does this feel so awkward and forced? What's going on?" "Oh my God." Sebastian turned off the light. "Is there anything I, a VIP member, can't see?" In reality, nothing happened. Victoria lay on the bed, and I lay on the floor, staring at the other end of the bed, unable to sleep because the bed creaked with every tiny movement. Victoria had complained about this before, but with a hint of resigned acceptance, saying, "Sebastian, don't push yourself too hard. Take it easy." Now, even a slight shift from her brought back memories. I wasn't the only one remembering. Victoria threw off the blanket, wearing a thin camisole, and walked outside. In the deep neon night, she gazed into the distance. Not far away, car lights flashed as Sophie stepped out of the car. She smiled and said, "I'm here to deliver a cake," Sophie explained while peeking through the window, seeing the separate blankets on the bed and the floor. She smiled knowingly. "He just loves the cakes I make. He won't eat anything else." Despite not being close, Sophie inexplicably sought attention, saying, "Sebastian can't eat others' cooking, only mine. He'll be so happy to see this tomorrow." She raised her eyes and said, "You might not know, I'm his first love." "Really?" Victoria finally responded. Sophie said, "Why would I lie? He's on this show to win me back." However, the cake Sophie made was nowhere to be seen when I woke up the next day. After the live broadcast ended, the four of us gathered for the first time in the post-show interview. I arrived late, the last one to enter. The staff handed me a microphone, which kept slipping off my collar. On the other side, Ethan and Sophie were drawing question cards. I fiddled with the microphone and it fell, picked up by Victoria. I said, "Thanks." I reached for it, but she didn't let go. Instead, she stepped closer, tiptoeing to attach it for me. The next moment, she took out a Band-Aid from her pocket. I was speechless, recognizing the familiar children's Band-Aid covered in cartoon orange faces. She always made me wear this whenever I got hurt. As she adjusted the microphone, it was just a gesture of colleagues looking out for each other, considering the cameras and crowd. She said, "It's stuck." The cord got tangled and she had to move closer. On the other side, Sophie's voice came, her peripheral vision catching Victoria and me. A normal action, except Victoria subconsciously brushed my chest. The familiar scent of her hair, the same shampoo for years, filled the air. The room fell silent. Sophie suddenly stood up. Victoria pulled her hand back, politely saying, "Sorry, I accidentally bumped into you." The host quickly recovered. "It happens. Let's continue with the questions." Just a fleeting moment, the touch and separation so fast Sophie barely saw it. She sat down again. In the Q&A game, it was my turn to draw a card, and I drew the first love card. The host asked, "Is your first love your true love?" Sophie rested her chin on her hand, looking at me, and everyone's eyes were on us. They all thought my first love was her. I replied, "Yes." Hearing my answer, Sophie straightened up, unable to hide her pride, glancing at Victoria, who seemed distracted, looking out at the falling snow. The window reflected my image. The host continued, "Same question for Victoria. Is your first love your true love?" Paired with me, the card questions were the same. Ethan wasn't her first love. No one knew who it was. She pursed her lips and said, "He was awful, really awful." Her tone was so light, with an unusual touch of grievance. Everyone perked up, eager for gossip. The host asked, "What did he do to make you so upset?" She turned her head and said slowly, "For instance, he married someone else but said he loved me the most." The fragmented statement left everyone confused, but Sophie couldn't help frowning slightly. The host flipped the last card and asked, "Sebastian, what would you like to say to your first love now?" 100 safe answers crossed my mind, but I blurted out, "I hope she doesn't hate me too much." It made sense, and everyone could understand it. They all thought I wanted to reconcile with Sophie. Sophie felt even prouder, raising her brows, planning to string me along without giving me any leeway, until the same question was posed to Victoria, and she answered, "I just lied to him. I don't hate him." Sophie began to sense something was off. Sunday night, today's live broadcast had both groups return to the initial Hot Spring Hotel. To create buzz, the show had all four of us squeeze into the same car. The comments still favored Sophie and Ethan, but there was a subtle shift. The comments read, "If you really think about it, anyone with half a brain wouldn't be blind like Sophie and would choose us. Dance in front of the main characters while Sophie happily counts her money." Someone retorted, "It's just a coincidence, right? Victoria and Sebastian never had any connection before." Discussions about Victoria and me increased, with some fans even creating a chicken and broccoli CP topic for us. So before getting in the car, the host sneakily handed me a task slip, saying, "Open it once you're in the car. It's for your eyes only." Ethan drove, and the car was fitted with cameras. Sophie naturally took the front passenger seat. Ethan, looking helpless, turned to see my reaction and said, "Hey, your wife gets car sick in the back. You won't mind if she sits up front, right?" Sophie also turned to see how furious I'd get, planning to act innocent and apologetic afterward. But I ignored them and got into the back seat with Victoria. At the red light, both Sophie and Ethan simultaneously looked at the rearview mirror to see the back seat. Sophie looked at me, and Ethan looked at Victoria, while Victoria and I sat at opposite ends, maintaining the greatest distance. When the light turned green, Ethan said, "Sebastian," and held Sophie's hand, showing me the new ring on her finger, a gift from Ethan last night. He said on camera, "Don't misunderstand. This ring represents our character's CP in the show. I showed you to prevent any misinterpretation. But you probably can't understand our love for our roles since you're the only one who's not an actor with no career ambition." He rambled on, trying to see jealousy or resentment on my face, speaking for both Victoria and me to hear. Unfortunately, Victoria had fallen asleep as soon as she got in the car, while I stared blankly at the small task slip. It read, "Hold Victoria's hand without being discovered by the other group." On the wide, empty highway, tropical plants lined both sides like a sea of green, with bright and gentle winter sunlight flooding half the car. Everywhere was under the sun. The navigation warned, "Entering tunnel ahead." I glanced to my side. Victoria's pale, slender hand hung loosely as she slept. Should I hold it? She probably wouldn't notice. Darkness engulfed us, only the tunnel lights flickering. I mustered the courage, reached out and touched her hand. She wasn't really asleep. She inhaled softly and moved her hand. She noticed. I sighed and tried to retract my hand, but fearing it would be too obvious, I left it in the middle of the leather seat. Ethan mocked. "Sebastian, don't you think the one being cheated on in marriage has some fault too? If you can't keep your wife, don't blame others for taking her." The tunnel was short, too short for me to withdraw my hand before we emerged into the daylight. I turned my head, ready to pull back, but in that instant, she gently pulled it back. Warm and delicate, the next second, our fingers intertwined. The old-fashioned love song playing on the radio sang cheerfully about a man discovering his wife cheating, leaving home at dawn and running away, waiting for her to wake up and find him gone. Repeatedly, the song sang, "She should have noticed by now. She should have noticed by now. She should have noticed by now." 5 seconds before the song ended, Sophie, unable to bear my lack of response to Ethan's taunts, said through the rearview mirror, "Some people deserve to be betrayed." She was so focused on my reaction that she didn't notice the tightly held hands in the middle of the back seat. I had forgotten. Victoria was a possessive, obsessive sister. She couldn't hold hands in the dark. It had to be under the sunlight. The third weekend's live broadcast was an outdoor shoot. The city neighboring the Hot Spring Hotel had a long winter coastline. The host on the bus went through the routine saying, "Today I learned that Victoria and Sebastian grew up in the same place. This episode's theme is to return to Victoria's school city." No one had thought we had any connection before. In the front row, Sophie frowned slightly, looking at me on the other side. Victoria shook her head. "No, I was just a transfer student." Victoria's tough childhood was well known in the industry. An abusive stepfather, a gambling mother, once a point of attack for haters. Sophie despised Victoria's background, her tone sarcastic. "I didn't know your life was like that. Honestly, what's there to brag about?" Sophie was very displeased, having disliked Victoria for a long time. She believed that Victoria's success was due to meeting Ethan's father, the entertainment godfather. At 19, he almost changed Victoria's life's trajectory. Now, divorced from Ethan and out of contract with the company, Victoria was resourceless, and those resources would go to Sophie. No one in the car dared to respond. I said calmly, "For someone with her past to be where she is today is far better than some pampered princesses. Despite the vast difference in starting points, some people can never compare." After getting out of the car and exploring the city streets, the group reached Victoria's former school, 13 High. Built along the hillside with the ocean just outside the school gates, Sophie walked beside me asking, "Did you go to 13 High too?" I had mentioned it before, but she never remembered. I replied yes. She chuckled coldly, her eyes devoid of warmth. She asked, "And you didn't know Victoria?" I replied, "No, we didn't know each other. There were 25 classes per grade, and we weren't in the same year." Victoria walked behind us, raising her eyes and staring straight at me with her dark eyes. She said, "He's a year ahead of me, senior." This senior inexplicably irritated Sophie, who quickened her pace, muttering about heading to the next place. At the bus stop, the host asked Victoria on behalf of the live stream audience, "Was your first love also from 13 High?" She replied, "Yes." Victoria stood next to me without looking at me, saying, "He was a bit harsh." She always described me this way. With 1,000 students per grade, it's unlikely we would have met if she hadn't been perpetually late, and if I hadn't been the diligent grade officer responsible for catching latecomers. She pleaded, "Can you not mark my name?" 16-year-old Victoria was slender and pure, her eyes innocent. I sternly replied, "No." She said she was late because she had attended an important free underground film screening, the kind of artistic things that parents dismiss as useless and unprofitable. Her tone was so obedient I thought she was going to register and head to class, but the next moment she turned and ran, looking back playfully, "Senior, since I'm already late, why not watch a bit more?" I disliked anyone who broke the rules. My friend Shen Zi once said, "Sebastian, look, Victoria got confessed to again. Back then he was my bathroom buddy, later my boss and brother, leaning on the corridor, gazing at the school's iconic figure under the tree. I said coldly, "I don't like disobedient people." Victoria heard this with an astonishing level of hearing, her bright eyes glimpsing us. We weren't supposed to intersect until that day someone followed me home. I told my mother, but she was busy divorcing my dad. She only turned to me and said, "If I divorce your dad, I only want your sister." She looked at me with a cold, sorrowful expression, saying, "Your sister is lovable." My sister, involved in a young romance with a delinquent, didn't want to end it on her own. So she found a more handsome one and innocently told the delinquent, "My brother doesn't agree with us being together." That delinquent, the one stalking me, found my number and messaged me saying, "I know your class. Wait and see. I'll make you bleed." On the way home, a dark figure followed me. They were capable of anything. In the alley behind 13 High, amidst the night snow, the footsteps grew closer. I stood my ground, gripping my compass, trying to stay calm. At the critical moment, a girl's voice rang out. "I already called the police. I said you were harassing and stalking me, even taking secret photos. They just wanted to scare me, not end up in jail." Her bluff worked. On the way home, she cautiously said, "Senior, I have a small heart. I was really scared." She faked bravery better than anyone. I apologized. "I'm sorry for dragging you into this." She stopped in front of me, blocking the streetlight, shaking her head. "No," her voice clean and pleasant. I wanted to say I'm very obedient. I believed her, her pure eyes looking at me without any deceit. If not for seeing her the next day leading a group of delinquents to confront those guys, followed by being late and scribbling the name Tiffany in my book, I would have continued believing her. In my second year of college, my sister called saying, "Mom still doesn't want to see you. You look too much like Dad." I asked, "What do you want to say?" She laughed. "Remember that pretty girl from high school, Victoria? My boyfriend likes her. Can you get her contact for me?" Despite being family, I didn't want to cut ties, but that day, I blocked her. For decades, even through my marriage and divorce, we never contacted again. Victoria had just finished her college entrance exams, and we hadn't spoken for 3 years, practically strangers. The third episode received positive feedback, so the show decided to visit my city for the fourth episode, but that would repeat the previous episode. The host asked, "Where did you go to university?" The crew decided to visit there. I replied, "South City." Surprised, the staff asked, "Isn't that also where Victoria went to university?" Sophie looked at me, her face showing increasing discomfort. Before the fourth live broadcast, it coincided with Sophie and Ethan's drama finale. According to her agent's plan, I should have been overwhelmed with negative comments by now. But contrary to expectations, due to my indifference and the show's explosive settings, the unconventional CP between Victoria and me was gaining traction. Comments said, "Though Sebastian and Victoria seem distant publicly, it feels like there's more behind the scenes." I also felt the atmosphere was strange in the second episode. Some said, "I'm sick. Seeing Sophie uncomfortable makes me happy." Sophie's agent bought trending topics accusing me of holding Sophie back for years, with various tags involving my name trending repeatedly. In the square, a small account posted, "They've actually divorced," gaining thousands of likes within an hour, and the account liked every comment supporting Sophie and Ethan. Half an hour later, another photo of me was posted. In the photo, I looked disheveled and haggard. The caption read, "No wonder his wife left him, looking so sloppy." This photo was taken by Sophie when she was resting at home due to menstrual cramps. At that time, I was enduring a severe cold to cook porridge for her. She was picky and only drank the porridge I made when she felt unwell. She pouted and said, "Take a picture." I didn't like taking photos, but she insisted on documenting her husband's kindness to post on social media, so she pulled me into the shot. Later, during the divorce proceedings, I found out that she had sent that photo to Ethan saying, "He's so greasy, I can't stand it." The comments under that photo didn't go as the small account expected. Some rational netizens started criticizing him, saying, "Is doxing fun? This photo is too private." I reasonably suspect your identity. Who isn't like this at home? The small account kept deleting comments and eventually had to delete the photo. The night before the live broadcast, Sophie called me and asked, "Did you create a small account to criticize Ethan?" She sent me a screenshot. I recognized the ID. It was one of her career fans, now turning against Ethan and Sophie. Sophie's career was at its peak, and her reputation was crucial. To the outside world, it seemed she hadn't divorced yet, and was participating in this explosive reality show to hype her CP with Ethan, which was absurd. People thought I had taken over her account. Although it attracted many CP fans, the more loyal solo fans were quickly dropping off. But who would have thought she was also forced to participate in this show to whitewash her infidelity and shift the blame onto me? I calmly said, "That was a fan who used to support you. Did you forget?" She asked, puzzled, "Wasn't it you?" I replied, "Of course not." Her words amused me. I was about to hang up when she said, "No matter what, Ethan is unhappy because of you. Even though I know it might not be you, can you apologize?" I laughed. "Sophie, are you upset because Ethan is unhappy or because your fans are leaving?" She was struck by my words and became calmer, sarcastically saying, "Do you really believe what those netizens say about you and Victoria?" She scoffed. "Why don't you go like Victoria then?" She laughed mockingly, her attitude superior. "Stop liking me, it's exhausting." In the past, I would have shown weakness at this point, but now I blurted out, "Okay." She coldly said, "I knew you wouldn't agree. How spineless are you?" She realized something was off halfway through her sentence and was surprised. "What did you just say?" I couldn't be bothered to repeat myself and hung up. During the weekend live broadcast, Sophie's agent was waiting for me to lose my temper, but it was Sophie who slipped up. Ethan was blow-drying Sophie's hair, and she playfully said, "Sebastian, love you." She didn't realize her mistake until she saw Ethan's stiff expression. That night, Victoria didn't participate in the live broadcast. She had a film nominated for an international award and was flying abroad. I wandered around the familiar city alone. When I returned to the hotel, I saw Sophie waiting at the door. Wasn't she supposed to be having dinner with Ethan? The show crew said Sophie had requested to switch back to the original couples. The host told me the show was set up this way, just for tonight in the hotel suite. I confirmed the camera positions around the room. Sophie entered, her expression cold and distant. The brown glass table was set with a full meal. She said, "Eat. I made it myself." In all our years of marriage, she had never done this. Seeing me not touching the food, she asked, "What's wrong, Sebastian? You seem to enjoy eating over there." I honestly replied, "I can't eat looking at your face." Her pupils contracted and she frowned, biting her lip, trying hard to control her displeasure, finally forcing a gentle smile. She said, "Sebastian, I was just with Ethan for work for 2 weeks. Why are you so upset? It's all for work. If it bothers you, I'll apologize, okay?" Sophie was gentle and quiet in front of the camera, habitually thinking that a little kindness from her would make me climb up eagerly. But I wasn't. When I moved my things to another room, her face turned red, sitting alone at the dining table, watching the food get cold. I didn't leave my room again. She snorted in dissatisfaction and called room service to dump the entire meal. That night, I didn't sleep well, especially when I felt a kiss in my dream, light and real, with the chill of a hurried winter night. Every staff member had a key to the suite, so I couldn't be sure what happened. The next morning, during breakfast after the live broadcast, Sophie was in a good mood. Her performance last night had improved her image in the comments. The comments read, "I feel so sorry for my Sophie. Why is Sebastian like this? This show is a couple's version of a dating show. If you can't accept it, why come? Ethan, come save Sophie. Those three are crazy." Sophie calling Ethan by the wrong name is disgusting for CP fans, and why maintain a devoted image? Is it so hard to talk about love after divorce? Some commented, "Rumor has it they're already divorced." Sophie's agent told her the pre-show hype was enough, and they could announce our divorce in the next episode. They planned to use me to make her look like a devoted woman betrayed by her husband. In the final episode, Ethan would heal her, and they would sprinkle some sweetness, perfectly whitewashing their image. Sophie's agent warned her that this episode was crucial, and that she couldn't throw a tantrum no matter what happened. She sipped her coffee, her gaze falling on me, confident and dismissive, saying, "What could possibly happen?" She hung up the phone knowing I could hear everything clearly, but she was certain that even if I knew, I couldn't make a fuss. After all, I had signed a confidentiality agreement and received a huge compensation. She asked, "Are you upset?" Her eyes were contemptuous. "No matter what, you can't compare to Ethan and you'll never have me." Her lips moved, but I didn't listen. When she paused to drink her coffee, I asked, "Was it you who kissed me last night?" The door was open and staff members were moving equipment in and out. She instinctively replied, "Why would I kiss you?" She frowned, realizing something. The room fell silent, making the staff's chatter outside unusually clear. They were discussing, "How did you get milk tea?" Another replied, "Victoria brought breakfast and desserts for all the staff at 5 in the morning. Didn't you get any?" He said, "I was in the bathroom and missed out." The other consoled, "You can have mine. Don't be sad." He asked, "Why did she come back? Wasn't she supposed to go to the film festival?" The other replied, "She said she had something important to do before leaving, so she flew from Beijing and then abroad. Must be exhausting." The other agreed, "Yeah, I heard she had a fever too. I could guess who kissed me. Sophie could too, but she didn't believe it." She closed the door, choosing not to listen, but didn't turn around. She coldly said, "As if that's true." She approached, pointing at me, accusing, "You knew she came back last night and lied about being kissed to make me angry. How low can you go, Sebastian? Do you really think she likes you? If she does, it's only because I took her husband and she's retaliating. Do you understand?" She picked up a cup of water and poured it over my head, saying, "You're such a clown, trying to get attention. Are you being a lapdog again? That's always been your way. Without it, who would notice you?" I listened calmly. The next second, I grabbed a long booklet from the coffee table, rolled it up, and struck her chattering mouth hard. The sharp crack echoed, and she was stunned, a trickle of blood appearing at the corner of her mouth. She stared at me, saying, "How could you?" Outside, the host knocked on the door, saying, "Sophie, we found something." She hurriedly wiped the blood from her mouth, saying, "Just a moment." Ignoring the pain, she stuffed the blood-stained paper into the trash. She opened the door, and the host was startled, asking what happened. She replied, "Nothing, I just bumped into something." She asked the host what she was holding. The host then noticed me, calmly picking up the booklet and placing it back on the coffee table, not wanting to cause unnecessary trouble for the staff. The host stammered, and Sophie, her face still stinging, irritably snatched the paper to read it herself. It was an ordinary registration form, very old, a photocopy. It recorded the monthly rent payments for a rental apartment, with my name as the tenant, $800, with each payment confirmed by a signature. But that signature matched the one on the backdrop at the film festival, thousands of miles away, signed by Victoria. In South City, with its long, hot summers, I met Victoria during the summer break of my sophomore year. I worked at a tutoring center downstairs and she was a model upstairs. We knew each other but never greeted, having not contacted each other for 3 years. She had to cross the entire city to return to school, a 3.5-hour bus ride, while I rented a temporary apartment nearby. On the hottest night, a typhoon was coming. I was the last to lock up and saw a group of people laughing and talking upstairs. Victoria stood out, even in a crowd. She didn't look at me once. When I reached the elevator, they had already gone. It was empty. We could have said hello, being former schoolmates. I walked downstairs, and the sky, usually dark, was an unusually deep pink. Victoria stood there in a puffy skirt and low ponytails, looking very cute, her eyes unguarded. Under the porch light, her eyes were clear like a stray kitten. She pitifully said, "Senior, the buses stopped running." That night, I took her to my $800 rented room. The bed was tiny. Later, when she stood on stage receiving the highest award, hailed as a queen, adored by everyone, I was still eating instant noodles in that rental room. The only thought in my mind was how her first time at 18 squeezed into my small bed must have been a grievance for her. I didn't understand why many media described her as a cold goddess, arrogant and unruly. But that summer she was always obedient, doing all the chores, cooking 3 meals a day, always calling me senior. Only in bed was she seductive, calling me Sebastian, crossing boundaries, never listening. Later I realized her talent was all in her acting, and there was no modeling agency upstairs where I worked. She took a 3.5-hour bus ride just to see me. Sophie wasn't angry. It was as if all her emotions were drained, realizing in seconds that my first love wasn't her but a woman who looked 7/10 like her. A woman who won an award at 18 that Sophie could never get. From the day she debuted, she was seen as a substitute for Victoria. Sophie crumpled the paper in her hand, saying nothing more. She coldly said, "So what? That was ages ago. What does it matter?" She turned to leave without looking at me, but collapsed at the door. As her agent had hoped, Sophie appeared pitiful this episode, making everyone think she was hospitalized out of heartbreak, quickly trending online. When Sophie woke up, I was packing at the hotel. She looked around the hospital room but didn't see me, instinctively asking Ethan, who had been by her side, "Where's my husband?" Enraged, Ethan slapped her several times. The reality show paused indefinitely. Ethan came to see me once. He had her, yet he still needed to assert his presence in front of me, as if their love needed my involvement to be validated. She grew tired of his dullness, and he couldn't stand her antics, mirroring my past with Sophie. As their passion faded, they faced the same issues I did. Now sitting before me, his emotions were so intense that only cold eyes and trembling hands remained. He asked, "Sebastian, why are you never angry?" I didn't answer and stood to leave. He laughed and said, "Let me tell you a secret. Marrying Victoria was a lie." He thought he could eventually warm her icy heart, given the huge favor his family did for her. If not for his father rescuing her from that $800 rental, she'd still be a minor internet celebrity. He thought she'd at least admire him, as she spent her life striving for Rome while he was born there. But she didn't. Ethan continued, "I thought a woman like her couldn't love anyone. But do you know what I discovered after we married? All her passwords were 207. I initially thought it was a birthday, but it turned out to be the number of that shabby rental. She always thought of the person she loved during that miserable time. How ridiculous." I had extra vacation time, got my visa, and headed to the airport. While watching a show in the lounge, Sophie, fully disguised, sat next to me. She whispered, "Let's talk." In front of the large airport windows reflecting the blue sky, she wore a black dress, looking much thinner. She asked, "What's the real reason you joined the show? It wasn't to win me back, but to see her, right? Did you marry me because I look like her?" I didn't respond, calculating the boarding time. She bit her lip. "Sebastian is lying fun. Is it amusing to toy with my feelings?" I interrupted. "What feelings? You cheated, claimed to love Ethan, tricked me into the show to smear me. I'm just returning the favor. How do you see yourself as the victim? If I were a lapdog, would you feel guilty if I questioned you like this?" "Sophie, you said it yourself." I repeated her words. Some people deserve to be betrayed. Time was up. I turned aboard. As I turned off my phone, I received a message from Sophie, "I will destroy you both. Only when you feel the pain will you understand." Sophie always believed that if Victoria and I were ruined, I'd return to her. But she couldn't distinguish whether her impending revenge was due to my departure or the years of being overshadowed by Victoria. That long-suppressed desire to destroy was stronger than ever. She had the divorce reality show re-edited into a full live broadcast, releasing it on the day Victoria received her award. Sophie's social media post read, "He cheated. We're divorced." The public was in an uproar. Sophie and her agent thought they had won, believing I was just an ordinary person and Victoria had no resources. They thought our team couldn't keep up. The next morning, Sophie, trembling with excitement, Hadn't even opened her social media to celebrate when there was a knock on the door. She and her agent were arrested. On the day of our divorce agreement, she thought I was devastated, checking her phone to see if she ever loved me, not knowing I was gathering evidence. When Ethan approached me on the plane, I called my brother as soon as we landed. I said, "I've always suspected Sophie and her team of tax evasion. Teach me how to gather evidence and report it." He reminded me, "The process is long. You'd better play along. She wants you on that stupid show. Go along and lower her guard." I went initially for revenge. Meeting Victoria was unexpected. Sophie's full reality show episode was analyzed repeatedly by channel hosts. With the sharp minds of netizens and marketing accounts, they discovered the cheaters were Sophie and Ethan. Dates, times, and locations matched. My reunion with Victoria happened after our divorces, a rare coincidence. When I landed abroad, I used the work pass Victoria's assistant gave me to sneak backstage. The celebration had begun. A friend dared Victoria, "Want to bet?" With loud music she asked, "Bet on what?" Her friend whispered something, and she nodded. "I bet." She lost and accepted the punishment, surrounded by friends flicking her forehead. In the purple-toned party, with gold confetti falling, Victoria walked towards me, tears glistening in her eyes. Her friend teased, "Seriously, you got stomped by a horse during filming and didn't make a sound, but now you're tearing up over a flick to the forehead? Are you acting?" Victoria turned her head and retorted, "None of your business." Someone raised an eyebrow and pointed to me standing at the door, saying to her friends, "The person who cares is here. Of course she's acting more." Victoria pushed them away, and we locked eyes through the crowd as she walked towards me. I asked, "What did you bet on just now, and how did you lose?" She replied, "They bet on whether we'd see the one we love the most tomorrow." I said no, and I lost. She reached me and nestled into my arms, saying, "I want to see him today." Shenze asked me, "You said she was obedient?" Years later, when Shenze heard me describe Victoria this way, he laughed for at least 10 minutes. He said, "How is that possible?" He said that if Victoria were a naive girl, she wouldn't have survived. What people joked about as a terrible start was Victoria's reality. She was indeed born in a public restroom, not knowing her biological father. By 7, she knew how to shop for groceries and cook, watched her mother get drunk and repeatedly beaten by men but couldn't bear to leave. Every time as a child, she tended to her mother, curling up beside her to warm her hands. She loved her unconditionally because she was her mother. In high school, she discovered her mother had been wrecking other people's homes. She traced her mother's tracks, found the families, and stood outside, too afraid to go in. Inside, a woman screamed endlessly while the man remained emotionally distant. The little girl on the steps drew aimlessly in the dirt to make herself invisible. At that moment, Victoria wished she could die in her mother's place. Later, Ethan's father gave her a chance to become famous, signing her for 10 years. All the wealth she created went into his pocket. She couldn't leave, working day and night, owing billions in compensation she could never repay. No one knew her pain. In her worst years, she considered ending it all, feeling she was atoning from birth to death. In her tiny room, she repeatedly dialed 207 on her old flip phone, hoping the pain would stop so she could end it. But it never did. She thought of him every moment. The year Ethan pursued her, dominating the news, I thought she'd never return to me. Foolishly, I married Sophie, needing a stage to showcase myself, not wanting to stay in that $800 rental. A year later, Victoria saw my wedding announcement on the news. At the time, Ethan's father was terminally ill, the man who had both helped and tormented her. After much suffering, he agreed to let Victoria go, saying, "Marry Ethan and help him secure the shares, then you can divorce. I'll let you go." She agreed, married, and divorced. Finally, Ethan wanted her on a reality show, and she saw my name. That night, she braved the rain to the Hot Spring Hotel. At our reunion, the first thing I said, holding the heart rate monitor, was, "You need to wear this." Victoria thought, "What should I do? I can't fool him." She didn't know how much familial duty she had to repay before being free, how much gratitude before being clean. She believed there was no unconditional love in the world, but Sebastian just wanted her to be happy. That year, while praying on the mountain, I closed my eyes and made a wish I couldn't share. For Victoria to be happy, and for everyone to see the ones they wanted, no matter how many years it took.